Hello, Brian, and welcome back to Japan by River Cruise. I'm Bobby Judo.
And I'm Ollie Horn.
And joining us this week is Aya Shimada, visiting University of Tokyo scholar and founder of CultureLabs.co, the innovation strategy company that single-handedly saved an entire local economy after the Tamashimagawa River dried up by pioneering the concept of the on-foot river cruise. Aya, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
On this week's show, Aya's latest piece in Newsweek sees Princess Mako's marriage as an opportunity for Japan to reckon with its issues with sexism, bullying, diversity, and more. And if you're in Japan, that is literally the only time you'll ever hear a sentence that starts with, sees the marriage as an opportunity, but doesn't end with some slander about Kei Komuro and his family. We'll talk to Aya about her article and lots more. Plus, Ollie's got your weekly river cruise recommendation.
Yes, Bobby, this week, given that we're talking about a happy marriage, this week's recommendation is the Nakasu River Cruise Koibito Wedding Cruise. I've been told that the cruise is functionally identical to a regular cruise, except they give you a bottle of budget Prosecco and put rose petals on the deck. The pricing structure is very simple too. You take the price of that same regular cruise and triple it.
Also, as part of their post-COVID expansion, Rising Sun River Cruises has announced the launch of 4 brand new high-capacity luxury cruises for customers who want to celebrate the reopening of society, and 4,000 new isolation cruises for those who want to avoid it. All that and more, but first, Soap Talk. Brian unfortunately couldn't be here today because we asked him not to be here today. But Aya's here. Aya, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me.
In the news section, we're going to get into your latest piece for Newsweek. But before that, one of the things that I wanted to ask about was the concept of purge culture. In the article, you mentioned that Japan has a purge culture that tends to force out anybody who doesn't fit the mold. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that idea.
Sure. I mean, what I mean by purge is, what's described as ijime here in Japan, in the Japanese language. I feel and I have observed that almost in any community, there's this tendency to isolate someone who is different, not always and to different degrees, but that happens a lot. And, that's bullying. Mm. And so I see that a lot here.
And by isolate, you mean they don't even get a chance to prove themselves. They're not even given the opportunity to integrate.
That's right. Yes. So people either are, they're being themselves and therefore they are purged, or they can't really be their true selves, right? They're trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Right.
When it's not that they can integrate, it's that integrating would mean purging the parts of themselves that were individual or were different.
Well said. Yes. Yep.
And as somebody who left Japan at a very early age to go to America and has now come back to Japan in later life, in which of those two countries did you have this feeling of being purged?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I like being praised when I get asked a question. Keep doing that.
I like to think of myself as, being fairly good at making my way into communities. Mm. So I feel okay, almost anywhere. But it is a little bit more challenging here in Japan, in the sense that, there's already a community usually of people who want to assimilate with each other. And here I am, a different person, right. And I will not change who I am. So yeah, it's a little bit harder here in Japan.
But of course, the corollary of that is there is a community of people in Japan who have, like you, gone abroad, learned different languages, changed their mindset more internationally. And that is in itself a community, which I imagine you slot very well into.
Yes, absolutely. So, you need your support system wherever you go, right? And I turn to such people who understand diversity and inclusion as a way of life. So they might be Japanese who left Japan and came back, or they might be from other countries, or they might understand differences in a different way.
There are also people who leave Japan because they feel like they might fit in better somewhere else and then never come back at all.
Yes, I was one of them, really. Yeah, I was away for 30 years.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you said something about going abroad and building up your own professional history, your own credit, your own strength overseas is what kind of gave you the ability to be strong enough to come back and face that Japanese society that tries to force you to integrate. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think as a Japanese woman, it's very scary to come back into this community and, not be given opportunities of, let's say, in my case, management opportunities, opportunities to speak up without trying to be too feminine. And it's hard to come back here and be yourself. Therefore, so I was very scared for a long time. And, in New York City, I had opportunities to develop my confidence and skills such that I could kind of come back and be more assertive.
I'm reminded of the Japanese guy who just recently won the Nobel Prize. He talked about the idea that if you want to do something different, if you want to pursue your own passions or your own ideas without worrying about how it's going to affect the community around you or the concept of harmony in that community, that it's easier to just leave Japan.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Do you think
that's really true? Yeah.
But that phenomenon, does that hurt Japan in the long run?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes both ways. I don't think that it's all bad, valuing tradition and valuing harmony. Yeah. But this lack of ability to change as the world keeps on changing is definitely damaging.
Yeah. Well, the downside is that it might force out, potential Nobel Prize winners. But I guess the upside is that when they do win those Nobel Prizes, Japan can still claim them.
So they choose to, yeah. It's interesting because most of these people have changed their citizenship, right? Because of the, government's, there's a law that disallows you to have dual citizenship. Yeah. So in that sense, are they really Japanese? And I read an article recently that posed the question, why is Kazuo Ishiguro, the author, spelled in katakana, while, sorry, I forget who the Nobel laureate is, but, his name is spelled in kanji
Ali and I won't embarrass
characters.
You by saying it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
That's the only reason that we won't say it right now.
For that reason, I'm now not saying the name.
We don't want to embarrass you. There's no other reason that one of us is not saying it.
Yes. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, the choice of characterization is quite significant. And if I may make a point right now that, in my recent Newsweek article, I asked the Japanese editor to call Princess Mako Makoshi, right, with a sense of respect.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you'd explain she, but that's like Mr., Mrs.
Well, yeah, she is just used as like an honorific for men or women, right? Unlike she, her, which is what you put in your Twitter bio.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And so, why did they stop using that?
Yeah. What? Oh, yeah. So, okay. So, my article was originally written in English, and I published it in the U.S. because I thought that would be easier. To have that story published in English. And but I got the Japan editor to translate it, and he worked on it himself. It was really nice of him. Anyway, he started translating Mako as Mako-san and her husband as Keishi. And I thought that was really, we do need those pronouns in our signatures too here in Japan. Whatever you want to be called, I think that should be respected, and in addition, there shouldn't be an automatic decision based on your gender, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
So I had that corrected. Yeah.
Good. Well, talking about that kind of sexism is exactly what we plan to do in the news section. Before we do so, Bobby, should we run through the people that we need to thank this week?
Sure. We've got some recent activity on our Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/Japan White River Cruise. Clayton bought us 5 coffees. He says he's doing it because he's matching his buddy Brian's donation. And he's from the greater Los Angeles area, which is in Fukuoka. We also have a new member, Tim MGCC, just joined our membership, and he said it's worth every cent, yen/penny.
Thanks, Tim.
And then he says, does this come with a reference that I don't get?
Does this come with a Victor Kiam style money back guarantee? Hell yeah, it does. And it contains no Aspinall. Now I'm going to give Bobby another reference that he doesn't get, which is unrelated to that reference.
If you don't enjoy the show, Victor Kiam will give you your money back. And mail, we got a mail from Pat. Pat's also continuing to try to send us a donation without any success so far, unfortunately. And he also offered his congratulations on my barbecue project. Just real quick, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody who donated to that. We are just about up to 100 mon, which is about $10,000, which is a huge, huge amount.
Well done.
But it's also like a sixth of our total goal. So if you haven't donated yet and you'd like to, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
Yeah, please support Bobby, then he'll stop going on about it on this show. And with that, shall we jump into the news? Bobby, do you know what's in the news this week?
Well, Princess Mako is married and she's on her way out of Japan. And Aya recently published a piece in Newsweek where she talks about what she calls Japan's Megxit and says that Japan needs a feminist and human rights perspective on it. So Aya, let's start very broadly. What is the feminist and human rights perspective that Japan needs?
Yeah, so primarily I felt that Princess Mako, she was being cyberbullied, essentially. She wasn't given any agency, right? She wasn't assigned any sense of autonomy that, she made her own choices. Instead, it was her husband that was, continuously criticized. So, cyberbullying is a human rights issue, and also not assigning any agency to the woman at the heart of this was not feminist.
Well, let me ask a quick follow-up. When you say cyberbullying, I understand from your article that you're also you're not just talking about some net uyoku or some aikokusha spamming her with horrible email or something like that. You're talking about the way she was covered in the press. What was it about the treatment of her in the press that you identified as bullying?
Interesting. Yeah. So there was a lot of nitpicking of her whereabouts as well as her husband's, right? And that's already, irrelevant information really for, as far as the public is concerned. Why do we care? Why does it matter? And in addition, there were a number of stories that were really about that seemed like personal attacks, whether it was her husband's hairstyle or her husband's mother's borrowing money from her ex-fiancé and so on and so forth. Those things are really irrelevant. Why should the public even care about these things? However, when the media publishes, the paparazzi publishes these items, I think that, I wish people were smarter, to be honest, but, people will just follow their lead in what we call bashing here in Japan, on criticism and cyberbullying.
I wonder what the percentages actually are, because I think you do hear a number of people who watch the TV shows about, they watch the 24-hour coverage for days on end and go, I don't want to watch this. I'm tired of this. Why are they spending so much time on this?
Yeah, I agree. I personally, I don't watch any TV here in Japan. And in my personal sense, I don't have any statistics, but my personal sense is that, it's a bell curve, right? So there's a small number of people who are participating in this actively. And there's a lot of commercial reasons for, clickbaiting, right? So that's definitely there. But the rest of us, I think, we're just watching without intervening. And my part of my point is that we do need to intervene in these activities.
This idea of people making money out of them and the clickbait angle, I think, is probably the simplest explanation, right? But I wonder whether people like this from the royal family, the media think they almost have a special pass, because the media feels ownership of celebrities generally. But there are maybe certain parts of a celebrity's life which they wouldn't touch. But because of this idea of a kind of a public ownership and a special kind of accountability, I wonder whether the media thinks that they're given a pass to push even further than they would do for just a regular celebrity.
Yeah, I think that's one point of view, and I have two things to say about that. One is that respect should be universal, right? Whatever your role, whatever work you have, or whatever title or positions you have, and that needs to be there. The other point is that even royalty, they have human rights. They are born as humans. So they should be able to leave if they want to. They are assigned roles at birth, and they should be given a voice.
So in terms of the media coverage, what would the ideal coverage be? What would the extent of that coverage look like?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have any opinion on this because, the role of royalty to begin with is very, it's a discussion. And so I think it depends on that. So here in Japan, they're meant to be cultural symbols, right? But there's a lot of historical baggage that comes with the royal family here, and people expect them to lead Japan's culture and position in a way. Not everybody, but there's that expectation by some, and so that's the added burden on them besides being today's symbol.
Do you think it's true that their job is to lead the culture? I wonder whether actually the opposite's true for the monarchy. They're supposed to reflect the culture as it was. The monarchy is kind of necessarily conservative, and the idea of a progressive monarchy is a kind of oxymoron.
Yeah, interesting. And so, I've been reading about that recently, and it's like you have to be both at the same time, right? You have to be both at the same. That's why they choose certain marriages. I'm not really sure. I'm just speculating, but you have to be up to date, and you have to also empower your position, which by necessity is it's hereditary, and you have to maintain that tradition matters.
Modern and traditional at the same time.
That's right. I'm
trying to think of how that would translate to I'm imagining a politician doing an Instagram shazai kaiken where they apologize for visiting Yasukuni Jinja, but they're doing it from Yasukuni Jinja.
yeah, something exactly. No, but, I think it can be a real media strategy, to be honest, if you are in that position. Yeah.
Well, everyone is comparing and contrasting with what happened with Harry and Meghan in the UK. And I'm curious about whether or not, because in this instance, it's a female member of the royal family getting married and leaving, is that somehow seen as more of a betrayal because of traditional Japanese gender roles?
I'm not sure. To be honest, Japanese people were not following Megxit that much.
Yeah. Japanese people were like, that actress I liked from Suits isn't there anymore.
Exactly. So, a lot of Japan sees outside of Japan as almost like outer space, not subject for comparison. So, I'm not sure. But there was definitely a sense of control and ownership and, infantilizing nature to the treatment of Princess Mako in the media and in social media.
Maybe this is a good time to ask the question, which I've seen on Twitter almost every time this is discussed, which is, why do we keep talking about them marrying a commoner when she had no other options? It's like, what other agency does she have? What was she supposed to do? Exactly.
What was she supposed to do? Really, and along that point, I saw an article recently about, she's following her love, and what's wrong with that? She may not be even in love, right? Maybe she just wanted somebody to take her out of Japan, and this happens all the time with the rest of us. We don't always marry for love. We don't need to romanticize her situation.
Ali and I talked about this in the extras last week a little bit, just because all of the things like the ponytail and wearing the pinstripe suit, all of these little things that they're doing that are kind of like screw yous to their handlers. When they look at each other and people go like, oh, you can see how in love they are, you can see how deeply they care about each other. I'm always kind of curious if an element of that isn't this forbidden love, or like we're sticking it to everyone else together. There's something about that could be, I don't want to romanticize that either, but like that could really kind of like solidify them as a couple if they feel like it's them against the world.
Yes, it's the persecution. I don't know. That sometimes is romantic.
My previous question wasn't actually rhetorical. What were her other options? Like, what was she supposed to do other than marry a commoner?
Marry a prince from another country? Is that an option?
No, then she's marrying a foreigner. That's even worse than marrying a commoner. He won't have a ponytail. He'll have dreadlocks. Imagine that.
Do any?
Yeah, I don't know
Are there
other choices she had.
Are there other noble families in Japan that she would have been allowed to marry into, or would have been more acceptable? What has everybody done up until now?
As far as I know, the female royals married a commoner in recent times.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a non.
I mean, this is a
criticism
dime
anyway.
clan. I mean, they're reduced in number all the time, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, how are you going to marry your brother and cousin, and what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's. I mean, that happens too,
Well,
but not the brother.
Well, hang on. I'm from the West Country. Don't disrespect my culture. That's exactly what we do.
So, Aya, in your article, you start out talking about how you spoke about it with your daughter and how your daughter heard about it at school. Did she hear her friends talking about it, or did she hear from teachers? I'm wondering how much the younger generations actually care.
That's good. Yeah, I wonder that too. I think that she heard about this from her friends. So definitely their families are talking about this. I don't think that children really have any concept of the royal family. So, but there's, let me just make this point. So in Japanese schools, I think there's very little critical thinking, right? And so that's taught, and there are limited opportunities to express your own ideas and thoughts as presentations or essays or whatever. There's always a model answer. So in that sense, I doubt very much that they were having a real discussion. It was more like, oh yes, this is in the news, and she's this and that, and he's this and that. That's my sense.
When you were your daughter's age, what was your view on the imperial family?
Oh, that's good. I didn't have any, I didn't care. So my grandparents used to take me to the Imperial Palace for the sakura viewing, cherry blossom season.
Yeah.
Just for the trees, the flowers. That's it.
Did you?
When I was in high school, Princess Masako married. So she was a commoner that married the prince, and that was in the news because my friend lived in the same neighborhood as her family did. I mean, that was in our conversation because of that when it was in the news.
Did you have any sense of what the popular view of the imperial family was at that time?
No. No. Yeah, I didn't get much, impression of controversy. Yeah. But I remember very well when it was reported in the news, and I saw, I was like 15, that, they didn't really ask the prince whom he wanted to marry. So there was like a roster of ladies that the Imperial Household Agency was considering as his wife. And one time somebody in the discussion said, hey, what does the prince actually think? And that was the first time he was asked the question, and he said, I like Masako. And that was it.
That tracks with the sense that I get from the Japanese people around me that their real only relationship with the royal family is through the media. Is through, you hear stories about them here and there, but you don't feel any sense of connection to them in terms of your own daily life.
I think that the Heisei couple, who are now retired, the Heisei emperor, he and his wife, the empress, made it a point to visit disaster areas and also visit Asian countries to commemorate World War II happenings. And I think that, they had things they wanted to say. That's my impression. And, the royal family isn't really allowed to speak their minds much. It's heavily censored. So I think that this was their gesture to create their own sort of limited activism. That's my impression.
And of course, one of the ways to do that was to turn down the payment for the wedding. Yeah, I mean, that's what was reported. But I also read that, she wasn't allowed to have the payment at the wedding. Oh, really?
So yeah, I who knows, and who cares? I just want her to be free.
what do you think about all of the attention that's paid to Komoro's mother's ex-fiance and the alleged debt?
What is this? I keep vaguely reading about this. What's the actual scandal here?
So,
yeah.
his mother was married to, who had a fiance that paid for their lifestyle. And after the fact, he came out way, way, way later, I think probably after it was announced that Princess Mako might marry Kei Komuro. He's claimed that the understanding was that he was loaning them money and not giving them money, so that the mother owes him a whole bunch of money.
Right, okay.
It's not substantiated one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's about, I think, don't quote me on this, but I will say this, it's close enough. It's about $30,000 US. Mm-hmm. And in my article, I mentioned that Japan's debt is about $13 trillion, right?
Yeah.
And, seriously, people are worried about, using tax yen to finance Komuro's family debt. But, we should really worry about our country's debt, which also needs to be financed by taxes.
Yeah. It's kind of like the pot calling the kettle's fiance a dirty commoner.
Is there any hope that the next generation of royals won't suffer this kind of treatment? Or do you reckon the royal family might be done within a couple of generations anyway?
Well, we have to have hope. And, I think that we as people have to be committed to treating everybody with a sense of dignity. And if we are unable to do that for the royal family, then I personally am not sure if they're worth staying in the same type of institution.
So taking all of your management techniques, such as design thinking and agile development, how do we improve the royal family?
That's good. Well, first of all, my colleagues and I were joking about this last night, that we need to do some, process re-engineering and cost cutting for the Royal Imperial Household Agency, right? So that's gonna do well for our tax money, the use of a tax spend. And what else? Design thinking. I mean, allow them to have a voice, right? Because in design thinking and also in agile, it's about different people coming together to experiment incrementally. And right now we're missing the family themselves in the conversation. So there's only so much you and I can do as outsiders to opine on, how the royal institution should be when they are not given a voice to participate in this and own it.
And one of the things that you can do automatically to kind of increase your range of ideas and perspectives is to increase diversity within the organization itself. Bring in some outsiders, bring in some foreigners. And they could do that with Ali. I mean, Princess Mako's got a sister.
Hey, thanks very much for listening to this, episode 106 of Japan by River Cruise. Quick reminder, if you haven't yet gone to buymeacoffee.com/Japan by River Cruise and bought a pack of Japan by River Cruise stickers, you lack sex appeal.
And thank you very much to our guest this week, Aya Shimada. Aya, it was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll look forward to your next piece whenever it comes out.
Thank you so much, Bobby and Ollie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to all our listeners, and we will see you next week.